I'm Marie Vigourou.
I'm Jeremy Greer.
And this is Rude Eats, a delicious podcast where we sink our teeth into every episode of the show Hannibal.
I want Will Graham, I really do. And I think that we could have some fun. Then you can do anything you like. I might even go and help you catch the shrike. I want Will Graham, I want that man. For every meal and on demand. His mind shines and his body's cut. I know that he works for the FBI, but what other man has pure empathy and the ability to see my mind? Jack, what other thing have I ever asked you for? Besides, never looking into my pantry? And I won't get that either. Damn. I want Will Graham, I want him so. And he really doesn't need to know what's in my meals or on my mind. I just want Will Graham to be mine. I want him and I want him now. I said before, I don't care how. I'll give him tests, he'll draw a clock. And then his dark desires I will unlock. We'll be together, Will and me. We'll throw some grand dinner parties. We'll cut the flesh, we'll cook the meat. He'll eat the food just like me. Give me goddamn Will Graham.
Mary, the show keeps getting crazier. How are you? How are you with Hannibal right now? Where are you at? What's going on? What's your state of mind?
Okay. Well, I mean, so last week when I said that, there's an episode called Fromage coming up, maybe we're going to see Franklin die, I didn't think that this was going to happen.
Sometimes you say things, and I have to just sit here and listen to them and not react, because any reaction on my part would give the whole game away. And yeah, maybe Franklin will die in the episode named Fromage was definitely one of those. So,
oh my god, I'm gonna make people scream and not even because on Carrying Wayward, I do it, but purposefully, where I say things that I know are going to tickle people. But here I have no clue, so I just said something. And anyway,
you just get into it. It's this episode is a lot.
Yes,
and it's interesting to me that it is there's such a heavy focus on the quote unquote monster of the week. And even with all of that, because a majority of the episode's focus is that. It still reveals so much about Will and Hannibal's relationship and how just already weirdly codependent they are on one another. It's just fascinating. All throughout while we're chasing a serial killer who makes, vocal cords into violin strings.
And guts anyway. I think that there's also a change of state, right? So we'll talk about that when we talk about the title of this episode. That just came to me. But there's a big change in their relationship in this episode, and it goes from one thing and it becomes another, I think. And it's just so beautiful to see it happen. I loved it.
It's really good. It's really fun to watch a show where they are just no, these two characters love each other. We're just going to build up to that, right? Having that as the thesis statement, I think is really fascinating. Even though it's very problematic throughout, and that's kind of even better sometimes.
Yes, exactly. In this case, because they managed to do it in a way that is just it's delicious. It
absolutely
goes into places that weirdly a lot of people can relate, I find, and I can relate. Is that weird?
No, not at all. I think because relationships in real life are very complicated, even with just friends, take the romance out of it, but once you put the romance in, it gets dramatically more complicated, and
that's true.
You can have very complex feelings for a person that isn't necessarily quote unquote good for you, right? And you have to figure that out sometimes. Sometimes you date the bad guy, sometimes you date the girl that cheats on you. Sometimes you know what I'm saying? Sometimes you just have to work through that. And right now, Will's working through a lot of his daddy issues, I think. No, I'm kidding.
I thought it was his mommy issues, but I agree with you. I think it's definitely.
Maybe with Alanna, I guess he's probably working through both, just with the wrong people.
Do we have any admin this week before we get to...
I don't think so. just thanks for
All
everybody
right.
for like continuing to listen. Like it's been super cool to have people respond to us on Twitter and to leave comments on YouTube and Spotify especially. People are commenting like crazy on Spotify, and we just thank you very much. I'm going through and responding to all of those. I actually haven't looked to see how they show up on Spotify yet, but if you haven't seen my responses, if you don't get notifications for that, go back and look, because I'm definitely talking back to you. So
Thank you for doing that. It's always really nice to have like to be able to get like answers out to people to say like, hey, we're reading those and we love them. Thank you so much. We love the praise.
Exactly. Podcasters live on listener feedback. As much as we are terrified of being perceived, we also would like for you to tell us that we're being perceived. It's a real back and forth thing. Do you want to tell us about this week's episode?
Absolutely. Today we are covering episode 8, season 1, episode 8 of Hannibal, Fromage. And the episode summary reads, Lecter's patient Franklin Froidevaux worries that his friend Tobias may be a psychopath, but Franklin's growing obsession with Lecter is what concerns the latter more. Graham investigates the murder of a Baltimore musician who had his throat opened and a cello neck inserted through his mouth. Graham, with Lecter's guidance, interprets this as one killer serenading another. Graham's mental stability deteriorates further when he begins having auditory hallucinations of animals in pain and when his romantic feelings for Alanna Bloom are rejected.
Oh.
This episode was directed by Tim Hunter and written by Jennifer Scher and Brian Fuller, originally airing on May 16th, 2013.
Fascinating. I am super excited to talk about this. I want to firstly, before we get into what our theme for this episode is, just give you a huge amount of props because I think it was really difficult to come up with a theme for cheese, right? For fromage. And you worked like from the moment that you watched the episode, you were like, I'm going to put something in the DMs that I just want to make sure I add to the notes later. Like you worked incredibly hard to come up with something, and I think it's beautiful. I'm going to let you read all of this and let you talk about it because it's all you. I didn't do anything. So I want to make sure when people are listening to this, like this was all your work because it's so
that's
so
not
smart
true
and
because
apt.
we did workshop it together, right? Like when I was writing stuff in DMs, like yes, I was thinking about it, but like you did have some input about that, and I was like, yeah, that's true. Okay, so let's integrate that. So that it's not true that it all came from me. This was teamwork, 100%.
We're gonna break each other's arms, patting each other on the back. So.
So the cool thing this week is that fromage is, I think a lot of people would know that, but fromage is French for cheese, right? So pretty straightforward, which is pretty cool. But like you said, I have to say that these are kind of getting harder and harder to kind of link to a theme. So we did have to workshop it, and we came up with the theme of intention and intentionality. Because when you think about it, cheese is milk that's been intentionally soured, right? Like when milk sours unintentionally, it's really unedible and you should definitely throw it out. But when you process it with intention, it can become cheese. And there are like so many intentions, some open and some hidden in this episode. There's also a lot of choices that are made. And I'm just really, really excited to get into it with you.
Yeah, it's. I think it's going to be an excellent theme because the intentionality of everything, like even starting with the main focus, the main murder, right? Like the intentionality of displaying a person as if they were a human instrument is an extremely powerful image. And then all of the other characters throughout this, whether it's Alanna or Hannibal or Will, to a lesser extent Jack, who is basically absent for most of this episode, they all have some pretty big intentions, and they're going to be really Hannibal specifically has a lot of intentions in this episode that we're going to get into. I'm very excited to talk about it. I did want to mention something I saw on IMDb too. Franklin's last name, Froidevaux. Is that how? Am I close? I just thought comes from, again, the IMDb trivia page. It's a wordplay on the French term for cow's liver, foie de veau, which ties into the show's culinary theme. In essence, Franklin representing the calf, afraid of the lion in the room. So I just thought that was kind of an interesting thing. Another thing that I think people might get mad if I don't mention is that Franklin and Tobias are I've told you before that the show couldn't get rights to like Silence of the Lambs and some characters that come from that. So they're very heavily based on two characters from those books that Hannibal kind of manipulates and does stuff with, but they couldn't get the actual name, so they were just like, we're going to invent these two new characters to do this with. So kind of interesting.
Okay. Okay, I like that. I'm excited to finally watch Silence of the Lambs eventually.
It's going to be so fun. I'm so curious. I DM'd you yesterday. My sister called me and was like, I've been watching Hannibal since you started the podcast, and I finished it. And I was like, oh, okay. And she's like, Anthony Hopkins will always be my Hannibal Lecter, but this guy's okay. And I was like, oh. And that's because she probably watched Silence of the Lambs like 100 times before the show Hannibal even existed. So I'll be very curious how you take Anthony Hopkins' approach to this character versus Matt Mikkelsen. So.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. It'll definitely be interesting to kind of see that.
Yeah. And listeners, that'll probably be a special at some point after we finish the season 1. Yeah. So look for that on our social media feeds. Coming soon.
Yeah, coming soon. So when we workshopped our theme, that was about a week ago. And last night I took some notes and I looked up the etymology of the word intention, right? Because that's just who I am. And I think we really got it right because it actually comes from a Latin word that means a stretching out, a straining, exertion, or effort. And I'm just going to ask you, do you know how to make cheese at home?
I do not. No, I've never made cheese at home.
So I haven't either, but like I've seen a lot of videos on it, and that's something that I would like to try. So I've been looking it up. And in order to make mozzarella cheese, you basically take milk, you heat it up until it sours. So you've got like your solids on the top of your pan and then the whey on the bottom of the pan. You strain the solids and then you make the effort to like stretch them to like you. So first of all, you have to actually strain them with effort also, right? Like with the cheesecloth. And you have to stretch the solids until it becomes mozzarella. And that's not something that we could have planned. Like this is just like serendipitous that this is what this means.
I do want to mention, so last night I was, you mentioned that you were starting to take notes or whatever, so I was looking, or you mentioned that you wrote out the theme, so I went to look at it, and then I immediately copied and pasted it and sent it to Autumn, who was sitting next to me on the couch, so she could read it, because I was like, you got to read this, like this is what we're going to be talking about tomorrow, and she's like, oh, this reminds me of a quote, and I was like, okay, and she sends me a quote that says, a cheese may disappoint. It may be dull. It may be naive. It may be over-sophisticated. Yet it remains cheese. Milk's leap towards immortality. And I absolutely love that. Apparently that's attributed to John Updike, who wrote Cheese is Milk's Leap Towards Immortality in his book Rabbit Run. But the full quote is attributed to Clinton Fadiman, who basically was using it to describe his like cheese making process. And like props to Autumn for just having that laying around and like just knowing that immediately. But also just it fits so well with what I think we're workshopping. Like again, that effort, that intentionality, that straining, that exertion, that leap towards immortality. And that's going to play into that's exactly where I was going. That's going to lead into I think what Hannibal is trying to do with Will, whether it's his intention or not. I think in at least one case, like maybe he had some unexpected intention, some unintended consequences.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think that's definitely up for debate because maybe you find out later, but like, I don't think that I could know for sure. I have my opinion on it, but like, yeah, I think, and just the last little word about cheese here is that again, that change from like from liquid to solid, I think is kind of like what we're seeing the relationship between Will and Hannibal kind of happening here. Like something's definitely crystallized, at least for Hannibal,
yes,
right? Like
absolutely.
He's like realizing a lot of things in this episode.
There's a moment where he makes a face that we're going to talk about that is so good. It is amazing. Are you ready to get into our Beat by Eat section?
Absolutely.
So we're going to start in Will's house, which is maybe the most ridiculous thing in this episode. I'm always shocked when I see this. I've watched the series several times, and when I was working on the video, I was obviously like scrubbing through and try to find clips, and I saw this, and I was like, I can't believe this even exists. He is laying on his floor and like just like with a boat motor in his hand, like screwing a screw into this boat motor in the middle of his living room on a carpet, surrounded by dogs. And I'm just like, this is not where you work on boat motors. You don't lay down on your floor in like a boudoir pose and work on a fucking boat motor. Like, what are we doing? What is this? What is happening right now?
When I read your notes last night, I was like, this is really reminiscent of that tweet about David Duchovny being a TA and just lounging around in a whorish manner in class.
I love it so much. It's very much lounging in a whorish manner is what Will Graham is doing here.
Absolutely.
He hears a noise and he goes outside to investigate. It seems like it's a hurt animal of some kind.
I thought it was a stag. I might be wrong, but
yeah.
I thought it was a hurt stag, which symbolism.
He wanders around in the woods for a while, but we don't see him see anything. And we cut over to Tobias, who is teaching a student how to play the cello, and they begin to talk about the strings. The student's complaining that the strings are too rough on his fingers, and he should be allowed to learn on the easier strings. And the student asks, are they really made from catgut? And Tobias says, not always. And then we get this relatively long and what I consider a soft montage with this like soft music playing and this beautiful imagery of him turning human intestines into strings for his stringed instruments.
And I loved it. It was so beautiful.
Yeah, I've been so worried because when we started the podcast, you were like, sometimes the gore and things really ick me out. And so every time we get to an episode, I'm like, this is going to be it. This is going to be the one that Mary freaks out on. And it has not happened yet. It hasn't happened yet.
I'm so scared because and you know what? When it happens, it's going to be the most innocuous thing. And you're going to be like, oh, okay.
This is what bothers her? Okay. Well.
Okay. All right. Let's move on. But yeah, it was just like so surprising to me though on my first watch because I was like, what is going on? And then, honestly, I had this aha moment where I was like, oh, that's what the look between them was in the last episode. Like when they meet at the hunger relief charity, mm-hmm. I was like, ooh, that was a lingering look that they gave each other. But I didn't mention it because I was like, maybe I'm just reading too much into this. But no. They knew. They knew.
They knew.
They knew.
They knew what was about to happen. That was one predator looking at another predator, right?
Exactly. And the show works overtime to really make that parallel too, right? Like because this montage is very similar to the ones of Hannibal cooking.
Yes, exactly. It's not culinary, right? This is the first time we've seen one of these montages that didn't end up with a delicious plate of food on the other side.
But it's beautiful music, and I'm just like, oh.
Yeah. We get our intro, and then we return to Will, who has now called Alanna over to help look for this injured animal, even though he kind of tells her, like, if it wasn't a coyote, coyotes probably got it, and if it was a coyote, coyotes probably still got it. And she kind of looks at him and is like, "Did you call me over to collect animal parts?" Right. And he says, "Did you think it was a date?" And this is when they kind of flirt back and forth about like, "Do you date? Oh, what makes you think that I don't date?" Alanna says she's not really the type of person to date. And then eventually they just kind of are like, oh, we can't find this wounded animal. Like we've gone in a big circle. I guess I'll save my Will Alanna stuff for a little bit later. Because like, yeah, this is cute, but like this isn't probably the moment to get into it, I guess. But I do have a lot of thoughts on Will and Alanna.
I'm really excited to hear them, but I have to say, like, when I first watched this, I was like, this has, like, I need your help because there's a spider in my apartment vibes. Like,
I love this.
I was like, oh, this is definitely what's going on right now.
we go to Hannibal's office where it is time for Franklin's next appointment. You can tell that he's very hurt that Hannibal has not allowed them to be friends. And he does some like real passive aggressive because you're obviously not comfortable with that kind of verbiage. And Hannibal, you can tell Hannibal is just completely bored with this until Franklin starts talking about Tobias. Franklin says that since they can't be friends, he's decided to look at his own friends through Hannibal Lecter's lens. So he Googled what a psychopath is and started checking boxes that Tobias fits, and was shocked at how many he checked. And again, throughout this, Hannibal just looks kind of bored. And I love because Franklin says something to the extent here of like, we can keep talking about Tobias unless you would rather talk about me. And Hannibal's just like, not at all. It's up to you. No worries. It's so mean.
I mean, okay. So I like that attitude of like, you know what? If you're going to be a baby about this, then I am going to let you, and you are going to waste your time in therapy that you pay for doing something that is not really useful to you.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And I kind of like that like basically being like, I am not responsible for what you choose to do in here, which is something that kind of comes back later. I'm so sorry. There's clearly something going on at the church because the bells are ringing.
I was like, is somebody playing a video game behind you? Like, what is that
Nope.
noise? It's just the church folks are out.
Just the church.
Okay, excellent.
Church folks are out. It's Sunday morning.
It's Sunday morning. It's time to.
We're talking about Hannibal. Some people are going to church.
We really got to question our lifestyles at some point. I really got to wonder what's going on.
I'm good. I'm very good. Yeah. Thank you.
I don't need to go to the church. I can promise you. Church doesn't need me. I can just go ahead and say that out loud.
Same. But there's a line that Hannibal has that I really love here about like, he says, psychopaths are not crazy. They're fully aware of what they do and the consequences of those actions. And I really want us to remember this because this is, I think, the thesis statement, like the statement of intent, right? Haha, theme for this episode. And I'm going to be bringing it up later.
Excellent. And yeah, so Franklin wonders if he could be a psychopath, and Hannibal is just like, nah, no. You're not a psychopath, but you may be attracted to them, which of course he has this this attachment to Hannibal. He has this attachment to Tobias, and we now know both of them are probably psychopaths of some form or the other.
Right. I know.
Time to go find our kill. So we cut over to a music hall where we see this member of the orchestra from the brass section is dead. This is another reference to some stuff that happens in the books. Hannibal goes to basically a performance and is like, there's one guy in the brass section that doesn't play on key or something, so he just murders him to make the orchestra better. He's
such a drama queen.
He really is, and he references this when he meets Tobias later, when he's like, it's not such a bad thing for the orchestra that he died or whatever. So that's and again, just a direct reference to some stuff that happens. But here we see this member of the orchestra. He has been his vocal cords have been exposed. A cello neck has been stuffed into his mouth. He's literally been turned into a human instrument. And it's very, very evocative. This is one of my favorite kills in the show, period. Like, I think this is just really so beautifully gory.
It really is. And I think, I'm also surprised at how little I'm grossed out at this. I think it's maybe making me ask some questions about myself. But I found it, again, I was fascinated with this corpse the same way that I was fascinated with the Wound Man, right?
Mm-hmm. It's, again, finding that beauty in death, and calling this, like, later or as we reference in I think the episode description, like calling this a serenade, I think is also very, very beautiful. Like, I'm going to use this to attract you to me, right? Like, I'm going to like specifically make this. Jack here looks over at Will and is wondering if it's easier for Will to look. This has been kind of a thing that's happened over the last few episodes, where Will has complained that looking at these brutal killings, having to put his mind in the perspective of a serial killer is wearing down on him. It's causing him emotional and mental anguish. And Jack here is very dismissive where he says, it seems like it's getting easier for you to look. And Will's like literally chewing pills as he's saying this. It's like, it's not any easier. I just shake it off and keep on looking, which is not a good thing, I think, for your mental health.
Right. And that's the thing. Like, he's been hearing his imaginary moves when he's awake now, too. Right. So, like, there's like, the episode description says that his mental state deteriorates. And that's like, we're seeing him devolve, like, in front of our eyes.
Yeah. Not good. Not good at all.
No. And Will says that the killer brought the victim here to put on a show. And this is another thing that I want to come back to, and which ties in really nicely with our theme of performance last week when we met Tobias.
I know, right? Like, I was thinking the whole time this was happening, I was like, we just got finished talking about performance. and then this happens. And then Will's going to literally play a dead body now. So, like...
We're really good.
They clear out and allow Will to do his thing. We get, for the first time in what I think is an episode or two, we see the pendulum, and we see these things start to reverse. He does a cute little hop to get off the stage. I don't know why this fascinates me so much, but like I don't know if this was filmed backwards. It looks like it was filmed with him just walking backwards and hopping off the stage instead of just filmed him hopping onto and then reversing it.
Yes, I wondered about that too, but it was beautiful no matter what was done. I agree.
Cute little hop. He sits in the audience, and then he begins to open this man's throat. He says he opened it from the outside to expose the vocal cords, and then he opens it from the neck from the inside using the neck of a cello. He discovers there's powder on the room, and it's rosin from the bow that was used. There's a quick cut to Beverly here, like slapping the bow and like powder coming out like she's a gymnast, like warming up for the bars. It's just a very weird shot for some reason. And Will further narrates, I want to play him. I wanted to create a sound, my sound. This is my design. We haven't heard the design line in quite some time, which is so much fun.
I know.
Alternate name for this podcast was almost Grand Designs.
Grand Designs. Oh my God.
And I just was worried about being sued by the BBC for the show Grand Designs existing. So.
Oh my God. So many possible lawsuits on this podcast. What is going on? I think that the shot with the rosin might have been just to explain what rosin is, right, to people very quickly, because I didn't know what rosin was until my son started playing the violin, right? Like, I had no clue what it was. And so I think this kind of showed, okay, it's a powder that you put on the bow in order to, whatever.
Yeah, in order for it to play better, in order for it to slide across the strings easier.
Yes, there you go, to slide across the string. I don't know this stuff. Like, I get told to buy the rosin, and I buy the rosin, and then that's it. That's where my involvement stops. But this is also like the literal stretching and the effort, of the killer's intentions, right?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I was trying to remember where I learned the phrase rosin from, and I think it's a country song where it talks about if you want to play in Texas, you got to have a fiddle in the band. I don't know the name of the song. It's probably Fiddle in the Band or Play in Texas or something. But there's a line is like you got to rosin up that bow and da 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 da. And I'm like, so to rosin up the bow is to put something on the bow to make it easier to play. Like country songs teaching me about fiddles, I guess. So
Love
weird.
That.
But yes, you were right. This is a literal stretching and effort of this killer's intention. So Will begins to play this instrument. I cannot describe to you how much I love this discordant chords that he is bringing out of this dead body. This whole idea is just so fucking goth and cool and amazing. And
so goth.
And the music is this like deep, like wah kind of noise. And I am just I don't know how to like express how much I love this because it's so good to me. And as he's playing, he looks in the audience and there's the corpse of Garrett Jacob Hobbs applauding him in the audience, which is very scary.
Well, see, that's the thing. Like, that vision that he's having of Garrett Jacob Hobbs actually, personally, scared me more than, like, his reenactment of the mutilation of the body. Because, like, this is basically Hobbs, like, clapping at Will, getting into the mind of yet another killer, right? And, like, he's like, smiling because Will is doing such a good job. And he's clapping at the good work that he's doing, thinking like a killer. And I'm like, that can't be good. That can't be good for Will.
And we need to remember this moment for when Hannibal's going to ask Will later, like, what does he see behind closed eyes? And Will says, Will closes his eyes and he sees this. He sees Garrett Jacob Hobbs in the audience, and then he opens his eyes and he tells Hannibal, I see myself. So there's this.
I have so many thoughts about that.
I know there's that direct connection between, Will's empathy, his like superpower empathy of these people, being able to see into the minds of these people and those minds being inside of his own mind. I think this is absolutely more terrifying than like playing a dead body instrument because it's so scary.
I know, right?
The implications, right? The implications.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever seen It's Always Sunny. There's a really good joke about implications on that show that is very, very funny.
No, I haven't. But
Hannibal is back over at Bedelia's and talking about Franklin. He wants to refer Franklin to another doctor because Franklin's obsession with Hannibal is getting in the way of Franklin's therapy. And we learned that Hannibal refused Bedelia's referral. He felt protective over her because she was attacked by a patient. And she kind of is trying to like shut him down on this, saying like, I'm your psychiatrist, you are not mine. But just learning more about this relationship, I think it's like, what the fuck is going on between these two? Like, are they?
Oh, for sure. Yes, there you go. Like, I think that to me like conjured up so many questions because I was like, oh, okay, so there is more to that relationship. Anyway, I have thoughts. There's notes later on. I don't want to get into this now. It's too much. It's too much.
We jump to the morgue, and our ERT teams notes that there's olive oil on this body. And Will, I love the positioning of this because these, our ERT people are standing up. They're in, white lab coats. They're investigating the body like they're in professional mode. But like Will is sitting like in like on the side, sweating, just looking like a weird little gremlin. And as they're like talking about him, and like he looks over, he's like, I had to open you up to get the sound out of you. And like all of the ERT people are like, what in the fuck is this man talking about? Like, what is happening?
It's just so creepy. Like, Will, you have to stop talking like you're the one who killed the victim of a really gruesome murder.
They discuss like what vocal cords are made of because these vocal cords were treated, like they were specifically treated like catgut, which Beverly knows because she plays the violin. And Will once again chimes in, this is a skilled musician trying a new instrument. I'm just like, Will, please, can you keep this to yourself?
Again, it's so creepy. Will, you have to stop praising serial killers.
He's so impressed with them. You got to chill out. We jump from here to Will at Hannibal's office, and they are discussing the case like they do. It's not specifically said, but like Hannibal must be enjoying this so much. Like they have to imagine, like not even being able to insert himself in his own investigations, but being able to literally assist the FBI in catching other killers is got to be just the highlight of his life. And some of the dialogue here is incredible, like where they kind of talk back and forth, and he says, every life is a piece of music. Like music, I think he says, finite and unique arrangements, which is a very eloquent way of saying that we're all going to die one day, I think.
Yes. Yeah, I think so. And I think it ties into like the conversation that he's going to have with Tobias later about, playing between conventional notes.
Hannibal asked specifically about olive oil because that was what was used to treat catgut like 100 years ago, and he tells Will that it was used to create a sweeter and more melodic sound. And this is when Will says, "I hear what he was playing behind my eyes when I close them." And Hannibal asks, "What do you see behind closed eyes?" And Will closes his eyes, and as I mentioned earlier, sees Garrett Jacob Hobbs, opens them, and says he sees himself. I love this. This is so. Will, I'm so sorry for what's happening to you, my friend.
I know, right? Like, and I know that the intention here is like for Will to conceal that he's seeing Garrett Jacob Hobbs, right? Like he's trying to hide that from Hannibal. But I also feel like equating Garrett Jacob Hobbs with himself also makes a lot of sense. So like no matter what his intention really was, like I think the message is clear to me as the viewer. Because he's literally dreaming of Abigail calling him dad. Like, he's basically taking the place of Hobbs in that way. He's also got that feeling that he talked about, I think last episode, about like feeling like they're doing the same things during the day, right? He also told Jack earlier that he was looking at this job as like a purely intellectual exercise. But I mean, you know, I think that the walls in Will's mind are starting to come down. Like, we've been seeing it happen for a few episodes now, but like here again, like it changes from liquid to solid. I find like it's just like so present.
Well, and remember one of the first conversations Hannibal and Will had in Jack's office where they talked about having forts in your mind. I just looked it up because I was curious what the actual line was, and fortunately I wrote it down in our episode 1 notes. But Hannibal says there's no forts in the vulnerable part of your soul. So just the idea, like you mentioning the walls are in Will's mind are coming down, and like Garrett Jacob Hobbs is obviously moved to that vulnerable part of his soul, right? Like they're, and as you mentioned, like he's seen himself as Abigail's father. He's basically equating himself with Garrett Jacob Hobbs because he's had to look through his eyes so much. He's gotten into, not only did he get into Garrett Jacob Hobbs' brains, but Garrett Jacob Hobbs got into Will's brain. They continue their discussion, Hannibal and Will, by wondering who the killer was performing for. This is when Hannibal posits that this could be a serenade to another killer. And Will says he thinks the killer was trying to show someone how well he plays.
Oh, that was so good. I like that Hannibal is really intrigued here because Will says that like this isn't how the killer usually kills, and he goes like, do you think that he would risk getting caught for a serenade? And I feel like this might be giving him ideas for later. Like, I'm just saying, like 100% that this man is going to kill as a serenade for Will later. Like, I'm calling it now.
Well, I mean, like, if you think about it, he kind of already has. If you think about I thought about that too. the fake Chesapeake Ripper kill, right? The copycat. And if you think about the way that he killed one of that dude, the brother of one of the girls that died from Garrett.
Yes.
Like hung him
Nick,
up. Nick,
right?
yes.
Nick.
Hung him up on the antlers, right? Like he's actually displayed corpses for specifically for Will to find. And like the last episode, there was like 3 of them that he was literally making a performance out of. And just at the end, Will decided not to show up to the performance, right? He just dropped off a bottle of wine and jetted. So,
but it was kind of funny. It's kind of funny because I think I would describe these as like a means to confuse Will in his investigation. Maybe for the girl that they find on the antlers. But like it's not necessarily like a gift to Will as much as it is like self-serving, right?
That's
like,
true.
But I really whereas like this killer is killing specifically as a gift to somebody else, to another killer, right? And I just cannot wait for the day that Hannibal kills someone specifically for Will. Like, because that's going to happen. You know it's going to happen. I'm sorry. It has to happen. There's 3 seasons of this.
Yeah. And you're right. I didn't carry that thought all the way through, but like his kills for Will have mostly been so like he could get the satisfaction of seeing Will see his kills, not necessarily a kill for Will. Kill for Will is now the name of this episode.
Kills for Will, yes.
That's very funny.
I love it.
Okay, whatever. We'll deal with all that later. We jump back over to Franklin in therapy again. He's telling Hannibal that Tobias told him that he was going to cut someone's throat and play it like a violin, and then of course the kill happened. And Franklin is worried, like, do I have to report it? Like, what do I do? I don't know what to do in this situation. And Hannibal gives him advice, I guess.
Well, Hannibal is like, well, do you have any reason not to? Like, he's kind of like, yes, you have to report this. And Franklin goes like, but what if I'm wrong? I'm always wrong. And you can just tell that Hannibal is like, damn it, the one time he won't let himself be manipulated. He's so done with this.
Hannibal wonders why Tobias told Franklin this. And Franklin says, in a very obvious moment of distress, says that he thinks Tobias told him this so that Franklin would tell Hannibal.
which is so chilling because it means that either Tobias like befriended Franklin, or he has remained friends with him only to have a direct line to Hannibal. And I'm feeling protective of Hannibal now. Like, he didn't ask for any of this. Like, he would very much like his name to be excluded from this conversation.
We've seen Hannibal kill like 7 people on this podcast so far. I don't. And you're feeling protective of the literal cannibal who's mentally manipulating Will.
Know.
Like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
I know. I don't know.
Hannibal decides it's time to visit Tobias. So he goes to Tobias' shop, silencing the bell that's on the door on his way in so he can kind of sneak in. We hear violin music playing. And Tobias comes out, and they talk about strings. And Hannibal says that he prefers gut on his stringed instrument. He has a harpsichord. And he wonders if Tobias was playing an original composition. And Tobias says, yes, like, oh, do you compose? And Hannibal says, oh, I don't compose, I discover, which is what he calls the process of playing on a theremin. And he talks about how it can generate any pitch in its range, even between unconventional notes. And I think I may have some of that quote wrong here, but I'm pretty close. So.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I just love that the answer of like, seems like we're both comfortable playing between conventional notes. And I have to say that I'm very taken aback by how like these two men have essentially like told each other what they are in complete code, right? Like this, I'm like, forget queer flagging. This was killer flagging. Like this is, yeah.
This is definitely like I don't know what the friend of Dorothy equivalent for serial killers is, but this was definitely that, right? Like this is.
I mean, I feel like it would be the friend of Hannibal. I'm sorry.
Absolutely, yeah. Have you been to Hannibal's dinner parties? I say to a complete stranger. Have you seen the TV show Sandman or read the comic book Sandman by chance?
No, I haven't.
There's an episode, without going into a lot of spoilers, but there's an episode in like a couple of issues of the comic book that deal with a serial killer convention, where they all gather together to like go to like panels and stuff.
Oh, interesting.
And it's a fascinating episode of TV. But in the comic book, it's good as well. But like it just kind of reminds me of this, like people feeling each other out a little bit about what they do, and how they do it. This is when Hannibal jokes about the orchestra being better now that the brass player is dead. And he says he's looking for new strings for his harpsichord. It's making an awful noise. I like this a lot.
Listen, this has like, I need help finding a wounded animal that I can hear making noise. Again, vibes, right? Like,
absolutely.
Like, look at Will and Hannibal, like alluring potential mates to their homes.
And we cut from here, from them, like literally, like that idea of luring to Will literally tying a fishing lure in his house.
I know. It's so brilliant. Oh my God, they're so good.
They know what they're doing. It's so nice to be like have a competent TV show that just likes to do this stuff. I may have a little PTSD from covering Supernatural for like 10 years or something. Like I may have a little bit of trauma that I need to deal with.
I mean, listen, again, like in today's date, September 8th, we've just started like a hiatus from Carrying Wayward, and I am just like, it feels so good.
I just need a little break.
I just need a little break from Supernatural. Like, and this is a really good break.
It's a good palate cleanser.
Oh, I like what you did there. Very nice entremet.
Will starts to hear the animal noise again. He leans close to his chimney. And then we have almost a smash cut where he goes from this to having torn out a large section of the fireplace. And at some point, Alanna has arrived. And Will tells her that he thinks it might have been a raccoon. And she looks at him like in a real specific way and says, might have been? And Will thinks that like as he was opening up the chimney that it escaped in the roof. Yeah.
So do you know how I knew that there was no animal in the chimney to begin with?
The same way I do, yeah.
Because the dogs did not move. I'm like, if you're someone who has ever had dogs, you just know that the second anything moves, right? Anything, the wind blows, those dogs are going to go bananas, right? And they're going to feed off of each other's energy and just bark louder than the other one, right? And so that was when I had my dog, like that was always my measure of danger. If I heard something and she didn't move, we were good. Like I was like, okay, we're good. No worries.
Yeah, my dogs are very reactive. So if something happens outside the house, God forbid my neighbor knocks on the door or anybody knocks on the door, then it's like instant. Like we have to let the moon know that something is going on down here. Like we need to talk as loud as possible.
I mean, imagine if there was an animal in your walls, you would know because the dogs would go bananas.
Oh, absolutely, they would.
There you go. There you go.
We learned that Alanna has just shown up unannounced. She was just passing through. Will points out that she has always avoided being alone with him, but now she's just dropping by. And they move close together, and he leans in for a kiss, which she responds. I can't stop looking at Will's just absolutely filthy hands during this entire scene. I know it's just like makeup or whatever, but like I just like that's such a pretty dress. So why are you putting your filthy hands on it? Like she's gonna have to go get that dry cleaned. Like what are you doing? And I know that's not the point of the scene whatsoever, but it's just little shit that really comes to get you. This kiss becomes passionate. They begin making out a little bit, and then Alanna pulls out and starts talking about how she's not good in a relationship. She's almost babbling, which we haven't really seen Alanna do. And she says like the way that I am isn't compatible with, and Will interrupts her, says the way that I am. And this is a lot. I have a lot of feelings about this particular scene, and I feel like we're 8 episodes into a TV show that's on a major network that's on NBC. And nobody has kissed. Like there's no will they won't they, there's no
right.
The express relationship in this show is Hannibal and Will, but that's one of the most fucked up relationships that you'll ever see, and it's probably not what like NBC broadcast execs are looking for in their Friday night lineup, right? Like they want to see a man and a woman kiss, and I don't know this for sure. This is just the way that I feel like that this relationship is kind of shoehorned in here, because I just don't really get it. Like I can understand him having feelings for Alanna, because she's basically the only other woman that's in his sphere at this point besides Beverly, and Beverly's much more of a sister to him than anything, and has kind of put herself in that position with Will, where Alanna has kept herself distant, which of course we all know that if you can't have something, you want it even more. But I don't know why Alanna is here at all. I don't get her motivation for this, especially with her flirtation with Hannibal. And it just feels like the network was like, no, you got to have this. We got to have the cis people kiss at some point. We got to have it. It's been 8 episodes. So,
well, my first gut reaction was like, oh, this is unexpected. Like I was like, I didn't expect this to happen. And then when the music changes and becomes like all cute and piano-y, I was like, oh, we're doing this for real. Like this isn't just like something that he's imagining. Just because like I didn't feel like he had expressed interest in her before. So it felt like this kind of came out of the blue, and I do agree with your assessment. I think that this was definitely like maybe a network requirement. But again, this is like what we have in front of us. And so like trying to make sense of that, like I'm thinking particularly, I don't know why, but in this situation, like I really relate to Alanna. Okay. Because like one of my beliefs in life is that like life will keep sending you lessons until you learn your lesson, right? And a little while ago, I sort of realized that like the people that I was attracted to were basically the same person in a different font, and it never works out because this person, no matter the font, is just not right for me. And so now I am better at seeing like the person through the font and not acting on my attraction. But like I think that Alanna hasn't fully learned her lesson yet. And I think that's why maybe she was seeking out Will, because she's like, oh, this is the kind of person that I'm attracted to, but I know my patterns. And so like, I know that this isn't good for me.
And there's something about reliving or re-experiencing something too, right? So she drove to Will's house right after, and we should note here that like from everything we've seen about Will's house, it's very isolated. It's he doesn't live in a neighborhood. He doesn't seem to like. I bet there's not a McDonald's within 5 miles. Like so, to just drop by, like you have to intentionally go to. See what I did? Intentionally go to Will's house. Like... She's dressed up. So she came here. And like I feel like she intentionally came here to relive whatever experience she has gotten from previous. Like I kind of feel like she almost wants to live in this moment of uncertainty. Like I want to have the kiss, because she even says like it's, this isn't a relationship, it's just a kiss. It's a really good kiss. Like she wants that part, and also she wants the ability to back down, which is. Like, I'm not judging that at all. I'm just saying, like, it's messy. Like, it's a little bit messy.
Oh, it's so messy. Yeah, it's so messy. But I think you're absolutely right. Like, that's exactly what it is. This was attractive to her while he felt emotionally unavailable to her. And then the second that, like, he kisses her, she's like, oh, no, I don't know that I want this. And I'm like, Alanna, you're a lesbian. It's okay.
It's fine.
But anyway.
Go date Beverly. That's who you need to go hang out with Beverly, please. I also should note our mutual friend Mike has been texting me about the show in general, and I just want to a shout out to him because he hates this relationship.
Of course he does.
I think I got like a 5-minute voicemail about this the other day, and I was like, I don't know. That's a lot of voicemail to listen to, Mike. I don't know.
I know.
We love you, man. Thank you. They kiss again, and she's kind of just saying like, oh, I can't, we'll never be able to do this. I wouldn't be able to stop analyzing you. I have this professional curiosity about you. I wouldn't be able to shut up. And he interrupts her with a kiss and says, I am not your patient. Like he's being, not aggressive, but he's being very like, very strong, confident, firm. Yes.
Yeah. And listen, like this is Hannibal's dream and Alanna gets to live it.
Right?
And I just wonder how many fics on AO3 actually have Will telling Hannibal, I am not your patient.
I should go look that up and see if I can find it.
I know, right?
She eventually says she has to go. She has to listen to her own advice. Like she says, if I was advising somebody in this position, I would tell them not to do it. And I'm like, girl, you drove here in a dress. I'm not saying you deserve anything. I'm just saying you drove here in a dress. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
She leaves, and we're going to find out that Will is going to run to almost immediately Hannibal, which is extremely funny to me.
It's so funny. But just to come back to what you were saying about you drove here in a dress, I think that's the whole thing, right? Like not like you said, not saying that she deserves anything, but she was comfortable with this pining while he didn't return her affection. But the second that he did, she was like, oh no, I don't want this.
I don't actually want this.
And it became uncomfortable, right? Like the second that the relationship changed, like the second that it went from like liquid to solid, she was like, oh no,
I don't want this. I just
exactly.
This was much better in my brain.
I just want to pine for you.
Yeah.
Yes, this is much better in my brain.
I wanted one kiss, and then I'm gonna get out.
Yeah. Exactly.
We cut over to Hannibal, who is treating Tobias to dinner. He says that the wine is from Virginia and that the Virginia wine is coming up or something. And then he just very flatly asks Tobias, hey, did you kill that trombonist? And Tobias says, do you really have to ask? And Hannibal warns him like, hey, the FBI is investigating this. They're going to send men for you. And Tobias is like, well, then I will kill those men that come to investigate me. And then I'll kill Franklin. And then I will disappear. He says he's been looking forward to it. There's so much to love about this conversation.
I just love that Hannibal is like, don't kill Franklin. Like, it's the tone too, like the delivery of it is excellent because it's basically like that meme. Like, I can excuse killing FBI agents who come to investigate you, but I draw the line at killing Franklin.
You could excuse what? Excuse me?
Yeah, exactly. It's so good. And they're being so direct with one another. I love that.
The directness, I think, is really the appeal here of like two serial killers just being able to talk to one another, right? About and not even have the flags up or anything, just to be able to say no. And Tobias even says here, like, "Oh, I was planning to come here to kill you." And Hannibal's response of like, "Of course you were. I'm lean, and lean animals yield the toughest gut." It was such a great response.
It's so good. And again, like the word animal here like does so much work because we know that Hannibal sees his victim as pigs, right? And so he assumes that like Tobias sees his as cats, I guess, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. Will talked about this being a new instrument for the killer to play, right? So Tobias's kills before now have not been public displayed. This was, very specifically a serenade for Hannibal, and
right.
So it's interesting to know like Hannibal sees kills as dinner or as I think the phrasing of like he takes their organs because he doesn't think they deserve them was in the last episode. So yeah, having Tobias see them as like raw materials for his instruments, for his passion is another interesting way, because Hannibal talked a lot about turning his passion for anatomy into the culinary arts. So they're both like treating their victims as raw materials for their passions in a way, which is something that I literally just came up with in my head. So I don't know if it works, but I'm liking it. So
yes, it's so good, because I think it's like this idea of like using human beings as an actual resource, like as a primary resource for what you think goes above their lives, right? And so for Hannibal, it's cooking. For Tobias, it's music. And I don't know why, but it just made me think of like of war, and how like we use, you know, human beings as like shields to go kill other human beings, and like you know, like using human beings for another purpose that we shouldn't be using them for. And I don't know, this is a big reach, but like I'm just thinking about that.
No, that's really good. No, I think we're both onto some stuff here, Mary. I think we're both looking at this in a really good way. Tobias, I lost myself in my notes somewhere. I'm sorry. Tobias says that he followed Hannibal one night and saw him doing something in a bus yard, doing it very well. This could either be a reference to Hannibal, like literally dismembering that dude and putting him in the school bus from the last episode, or it could be a future kill that we don't know about. Either way, Hannibal is obviously taken aback by realizing that he had been shadowed and he didn't pick up on it. And it calls Tobias reckless. It says that he's not only endangering himself now, he's endangering, you know, Hannibal. And Hannibal kind of stands up and like moves to the other side of the table and is like standing next to his mantle. And Tobias stands up and says, you know, I want a friend, somebody that can, you know, that understands me. And Hannibal's like, oh, I understand that, but I don't want to be your friend. And I love this. Then why did you invite me for dinner?
I know, right? It's again that idea of like, oh, you don't want me to kiss you, but then why did you come over? Like, anyway.
Hannibal says he was going to kill Tobias, but not from the food. He wasn't going to. I wouldn't poison you. I wouldn't do that to the food, which is just very hilarious.
It's so funny, and honestly, like so this whole scene, like I really couldn't believe what I was watching. I was like, what is happening? Like, because they're being so direct with one another, whereas this show has been so coded in the language that it uses, and like it's been hiding the intentions of the characters behind a lot of walls. And here, there's just none of that. Like the intentions are just like out in the open, and it's like I didn't know that you could create so much tension by just outright stating your intentions.
It's so good. It's so good. I do want to bring up something because I've been fascinated with it for the last like 4 or 5 days. But there's a giant painting above Hannibal's mantle, and it's a representation of Leda and the Swan, which is a classical kind of painting that's been represented in all kinds of art over the last like thousands of years or whatever. Brian Fuller has a tweet that they had to blur this on NBC because it's a pretty graphic painting of a swan literally like going down on a woman. But the reason I wanted to bring it up is because it's a reference to the book. There's a moment in the book where Hannibal like rents a house and there's all these paintings of bestiality in the house. And like, where's that Airbnb? Like, how do you even like, I didn't know Airbnb needed AO3 tags. You know what I'm saying? Like, I do not want to see the bestiality hotel. But he covers up. He's not into the bestiality at all. He covers them all up, except for Leda and the Swan. And the quote that he uses is because of they call it a specific artist, and I forget her name. But he says there's a real passion to the colors and a real heat to the fucking is the way he uses it. And it's just such an intense like moment. And the fact that they've read that obviously and like brought that into the show and like had to blur it is just very, very funny to me. It's just, I just wanted to mention it. So yeah, I like to get in the weeds with Hannibal sometimes.
I just find it so funny that like Brian Fuller bamboozled NBC into putting this on primetime TV. Like,
How?
it's just
How?
like, good job, man.
What did
good
he
job.
do? How did he sell
I
this?
don't know.
That's probably why
He sold it as a like a procedural, right? And then he was like, "Oh no, we need to go back to the drawing board."
This is maybe why he hasn't had another primetime TV show, is because everybody's like, I saw what you did. Like, you're not going to get away with this a second time. Like, we know. Tobias and Hannibal are interrupted by the doorbell ringing. Hannibal just like walks off and leaves him there, which is ballsy, right? To turn his back on this, professed killer. And as Hannibal opens the door, of course, it's Will, who immediately barges in. Like, he throws his coat over to the side, and Hannibal is just left there like, well, come
on in.
Uh,
I love that. I love that so much.
It sets the tone
for... that's rude. It's so rude, and he's just charmed by it.
He's so good. And it sets the tone for Hannibal being somewhat, like, discombobulated for the rest of this scene, right? Like, it kind of sets this mood. Will walks in the dining room, and Hannibal tells him, like, oh, I had a colleague for dinner. He had to leave on an emergency or some kind, which is very good because he's like has to close the door that Tobias escaped from.
I just love the parallels here between Will and Alanna and Hannibal and Tobias, because like they've both been very clear about their intentions with the person that they're interested in, and they both kind of like strike out and they end up having dessert together. And right. I feel like there's like a fic there to write,
There's a moment in mine and Autumn's relationship where it was in between us dating and being married, where we were broken up for a time and we were living in different states, and we were very strongly trying to be a friend to the other person. Like, we're just going to be friends despite having dated in the past. And so she would like tell me about dates she was going on in California, and I would tell her about girls I was dating in Louisiana, and neither of us liked it. Neither one of us thought it was a good time. And I'm just like, that's this vibe, this entire scene. Like, as Hannibal starts asking Will about him kissing Alanna, why Will drove an hour in the snow to come tell her, like, the whole time you can tell he's just like, I don't want to hear this. I don't want to hear anything about this. Like, I don't want you to kiss her. I want you to kiss me. But I don't even think he realizes that yet. Like, I don't think that he's quite there yet. So he's just like a little bit shaken, because like there's a moment where he's like getting desserts out of the refrigerator where he's like, what do I do next? Like, he kind of loses his spot as he's making this delicious dessert. It's incredible. Like, it's just such a weird meet cute rom-com moment for this serial killer / FBI hunter. It's so fun.
It actually has like When Harry Met Sally vibes,
right?
Like, they're really playing on the tropes of the rom-com in some of these moments in this episode, and I'm just like, how did they put that on primetime TV in 2013? I love it. Like, it's good.
You almost can see like standards and practices, or like Hollywood execs like watching early cuts of this and just not picking up on this whatsoever, right? Just not even seeing like, oh, well, obviously, like, he went to tell his friend about how he kissed a girl, and it was confusing and he got rejected. Like, you just not seeing any of this other stuff. Will says that he could tell the reason that he reached out to Alanna, the reason he went for the kiss, was because she could tell that she knew something. And Hannibal presses him on it, and eventually Will says she knew that there was no animal in the chimney, which I think is the first time he's, like, obviously he's been sleepwalking and seeing things like that, but this is the first time he's confessed that this is like an auditory thing now, that he's literally like hearing things that are not there. And he even says like he feels unstable. And Hannibal's like, well, that's why you kissed her. You were reaching out. You were clutching her for balance.
And this really feels like maybe Will also needs to learn his lesson about the people that he's attracted to, right?
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
You can't just clutch to people for balance. And again, I can see the foreshadowing right there. I'm like, oh my God.
I love this moment because Hannibal changes the topic back to the killer. And I love this moment because it's something that Alanna called out that both Will and Hannibal do, which is flirtatiously change the subject. And this is an example of that, of him cutting over to like, oh, well, I don't want to talk about this kiss anymore. Like, let me talk about the other passion in your life, like catching this killer. And Will is like, oh yeah, I still hear his music when I close my eyes. It's our song. I don't think Hannibal likes that either.
I don't think he likes it either, because this has, again, like, this has such vibes of like, well, I don't like you talking about this person that you just kissed, so let's talk about something that we both share, right? And then he's like, oh yeah, it's our song, and he's like, no, not like that.
Not like this, not like this.
It's like, now I want to kill Tobias even more. You can't have a song with my boyfriend.
And then in one of the most fascinating moments of the show, Hannibal seems to hesitate, and I genuinely don't know if this is him literally hesitating to say this, or if he's playing a role, if this is his human suit, his person suit. But he hesitates, and he says, I'm fearful to tell you this. I'm maybe, betraying patient confidentiality. But one of his patients, said that he thinks he knows the killer, and maybe Will should go interview Tobias. And this can be taken in a lot of different ways, because obviously Tobias just told him, like, if the FBI send men, he will kill them. And here is Hannibal literally sending Will, and to Tobias to potentially be killed. And this could be like maybe a little fit of jealousy, right? Like, because he's just heard Will talk about Alanna and Tobias in a way that he would prefer Will to talk about him. This could be just the chaos gremlin in Hannibal wanting to cause a bunch of chaos, which I also think could be true. And it could just be like, I feel like Hannibal wants Will to, ever since Garrett Jacob Hobbs, he's been kind of driving Will to understand that he is a killer and that he wants to kill, right? Like, that was some of those conversations we had in the first few episodes about Will confessing that that he enjoyed the feeling. And I think Hannibal has been driving him to that. And this is a way to, like, put him in a position where he thinks Will has to kill. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on this, because this is, I think, a huge moment of the show. And talk about intentionality too, like, just to link it back to that. Yes. Like, purposely putting Will in harm's way like this is amazing.
Exactly. I mean, I agree with you. I think that this is the most interesting moment in the episode. I think this is really, like, for me, what made this episode as good as I think it really is. Because, again, I don't quite know what his intention is, right? Like, why is he doing that specifically? But I'm just going to look at the possible outcomes here, because I feel like maybe Hannibal thinks that way a lot. Like, he thinks mostly about outcomes. And there's two possible outcomes here. Like, either Will is going to go and he gets killed by Tobias, which means that Will wasn't really worthy of Hannibal's interest to begin with. Or Will survives, and then he is worthy of Hannibal's interest in him, right? And I read the hesitation as genuine, just because of how discombobulated he is in this scene. Like, I think that this is really him, like, just taking a microsecond to think about those possible outcomes. Because I know that you talk a lot about how much of a chaos gremlin he is, and, like, how much he loves chaos. But, like, I am always just amazed at how much he's always aware of the possible outcomes of something, and he's prepared for anything. And so this tension between, like, chaos and control are just, it's so delicious to me.
It's so delicious. It's so good.
It's so delicious. So he's like aware of the possible outcomes, and he's like, well, if this, then that, and if this, then that. And, like, I think that that's also why he hesitates here, because he's fully aware of what he does and the consequences of those actions, like a psychopath.
Yeah, and it's that idea of control, right, of just knowing the outcomes, and then this moment of him not being able to control those outcomes, of throwing it out there. I think you're right in that there's that tension between him having the desire to see something unexpected, to have Will surprise him in some way, but also to have him, but also to control the moment so that he literally has control over Will. And that's I think we're getting at something that I don't think this show really gets into a lot later, which is that tension of him wanting to control somebody, but also wanting that person to surprise him at the same time. And that's definitely what's happening with Will right now. And that's in this moment of him, like, hey, I love it, let it free, right? Kind of like, I'm going to have to let you go, and then hopefully you will come back. But all of this plays out, and I think from Hannibal's perspective, I think he's almost very confused about why he's doing this. I don't think that he really, I think at this moment he's like, he's experiencing these feelings for the first time. Like he hasn't, and we're going to go right into a scene with Bedelia where he talks about Will, and that's, I think he doesn't understand why he's doing this. Like he's just kind of going with his gut, and then for the first time in probably some time, not exactly trusting his gut.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. And definitely questioning, right? Because his intentions were always clear before, right? Like, kill, eat, don't get caught. Whereas here it's like, again, it kind of comes back to this idea. Do you think he would really risk getting caught for a serenade? And here he's like, well, I don't quite know why I'm doing this. Like, why didn't he just send Jack instead, right? If he really likes Will all that much. But here there's like this thing where he's like, no, Will has to prove himself to me. Like, I want to see what he chooses to do in this situation. And it's so dark. It's so dark. I love it.
It's so good. Hannibal goes to see Bedelia. And he talks about how he sees the possibility. He has the possibility of friendship for the first time in a long while. And at first you think he's talking about Will, as he describes someone with the same hobbies and worldviews. But then you realize he's talking about Tobias, and his relationship with Tobias, who is somewhat similar to him, got him thinking about friendship. And then he goes to describe Will as somebody that is nothing like him at all, but that can assume his point of view. But he's like, by profiling the criminal insane, my dude. And I think Hannibal has like, well, it's a good place to start, isn't it, or something. And it's just such a wild statement of like, oh, this dude who is gifted at catching serial killers is the guy that can assume my point of view. Like, imagine telling your therapist that.
I mean, like, listen, Bedelia knows. Okay, she knows. I for sure, she knows. That's the first thing. But then I also just love that he's like describing how he met a man who's just like him and shares his hobbies and his worldviews, but he's not interested in being friends with him. He just wants Will Graham.
That's
he
it.
wants him bad.
He wants that man. He wants that man.
He wants that man.
Like, and if you think about, I didn't mention this in the previous scene when Hannibal, like throughout that entire scene, he's preparing this like delicious, over the top, flamboyant dessert, and like at the end he hands Will the plate, and Will, again, just like with the bottle of wine or with the glass of wine in the previous episode, where he looks so alien in that environment, that he's grabbing this like plate full of delicious dessert, and he's like, I don't even know what to do with this. So it's kind of fascinating that he picks Will, who again is nothing like Hannibal, but can assume his point of view, and that's the thing that attracts it to him. And Bedelia describes this as trust. Like, it's nice when someone sees us for who we are. It requires trust, which of course is difficult for Hannibal. And to go back to your point about making Will worthy, if Will survives,
yes,
she says he's looking for somebody worthy enough of his friendship. And she has a quote here about how Hannibal builds walls, but he's looking for someone clever enough to get past them. It just so good. So good.
I find this so romantic.
Between Bedelia and Hannibal?
No, but
okay.
Like what she says.
I was
sorry.
curious.
No. But like what she says about like the time that he spends building walls and then having somebody clever enough to get past them, like I find that to be very romantic. Like this idea that like Will is basically like climbing through Hannibal's walls as his own are also crumbling. Like it's just, there's something so romantic about that.
Like, go back to that, I've referenced it earlier, but that very first scene where Will and Hannibal meet for the first time and they talk about forts of the mind.
Yes.
And Will looks Hannibal directly in the eye, which he doesn't do for most people in that scene. And I think from that moment, Hannibal was like, "Oh no, this is the man. This is the guy. Like I gotta get in this dude's brain." And as he did, yes, but Daddy, I love him. I can fix him, says Hannibal. Wait a minute, hold up.
So true.
And yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I find this extremely romantic. I feel like this is setting us a tone, and we're gonna get confirmation of that later in the episode. I can't believe we have so much episode to go. Like we are getting into this. I love it.
We're crazy.
Will
crazy.
And two plainclothes officers show up at Tobias's shop. Tobias kind of instantly knows that they're there to talk about the trombonist because it's a small world. And he says, I heard someone tried to play him like a bow. And Will, who is going through it, like Will is not meeting anybody's eyes. Like he's almost as he asks questions, as he says things, he's like biting the words off almost, like he can barely stand to be in this moment. But I love this, like, why do you say try? Like, how did you know it didn't work? And of course Tobias is like, because you can't just open someone's throat up and play their vocal cords. Like you have to actually, like, they won't make music unless they've been treated properly. And Will is like, yeah, that's why we're here, because they were absolutely treated properly.
Yeah, there you go. I love this idea also that, like, this is a very literal representation of, like, trying to play, or like playing somebody like a violin, which is kind of what's happening also. Yes. But anyway.
Tobias says he gets all of his catgut strings from Italy, and says it allows the music to say something words cannot. And you kind of feel like Tobias has given his own little performance for the FBI here, right? Like he's intentionally goading the FBI, behavioral serial killer catcher guy at this point. But Will has got his own shit going on, so he's barely paying attention to Tobias, because he hears like a loud crash and an animal scream, and then like rushes out to the street to find it. And of course the cops that are there are like, we didn't hear anything. Tobias didn't hear anything. So this is all just very, very fucking strange.
Well, there you go. So like it sounds like there's it sounds like a car crashes into an animal, and there's like a part of me that's starting to wonder if the things that he hears aren't protecting him in a way from what's going on. Which I have a lot of thoughts about eventually, but not right now, because I'm not sure which way the show is going to go yet with this. But wow.
Yeah. Presumably he's going to be hallucinating some more stuff, so we could probably talk about it in a future episode. He goes back into the shop, and it's empty. And this is when he begins to realize, like, oh shit, things aren't right. Draws his gun, goes into the next room. One of the officers is dead. He calls it in. And then he makes his way down to the basement. This is just a very big visual callback to something that happens in Silence of the Lambs, which is kind of just a neat little nod for us fans. In the basement are like jars of intestines drying in the sink, excuse me. And he heads to this like corner of the room and finds the second officer dead, with his face and neck like basically cut through with the strings. And as he's looking at this, Tobias sneaks up and he has this like device, I guess, I don't know what you would call it, like 2 bars that he's holding in his hand with these, cat gut strings, presumably human strings between them. And he's trying to push that into Will's face. Will's quick enough to get his arm up so they don't actually hit him. And he's able to get a shot off, and he shoots between their faces, hitting Tobias's ear, and then like temporarily deafening Will. And this is always an effect I like when they do it in TV shows, where like everything goes to like a high whine. Tobias runs away. Will tries to shoot him, does not work. And we cut over to Franklin, who has just heard for the first time that he's getting a referral. I think he said it's his 9th or 10th referral. And he's just really sad. He's just kind of mad about this. And he says out loud, "You're angry at me for not reporting Tobias." And then Tobias walks in. It's like, not reporting Tobias for what? Tobias says, "I just killed 2 men." And we cut to Hannibal, and Hannibal's face is just like, you could tell he's devastated. He's devastated. He's stricken, and he's trying to hide it so hard.
Yeah, like he 100% thinks that Will got ganked. Like he's like, oh well, that's sad.
Franklin urges Tobias to turn himself in. He has like these long rambling, we got to level the flight kind of like
this plane metaphors. Is going
down. Hannibal is just baby. Like, Franklin, get the fuck out of here. And Tobias is like, no, you stay right where I want you.
This is so sad, right? Because like Franklin thinks that this is a character test for himself, right? Like from Hannibal, because he's like, let me do what I think Hannibal wants me to do in this moment. And so he's like really ascribing intent to Hannibal, when Hannibal is like no, that's really not what's going on. Like,
and Franklin begins to talk some more. Hannibal finally is just like, okay, I've had enough of this, and just snaps his neck, just like with a quick like whoop, and it's done.
This was so shocking to me. Like, I did not think that this was going to happen that way. And I just want to note that the only reason that Hannibal actually does this is because that he thinks that Tobias is about to tell Franklin about him.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, so because Tobias is probably about to loop him in. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, because he's like, I didn't do it alone or something, or I'm not the only one, or like there's like this idea that like he's about to say something about him being in cahoots with somebody else. And Hannibal is like, no, I can't have that. And so I just think that also shows one of his big intentions is to not get caught, right? Like he is willing to kill people that he doesn't necessarily think deserve to die or don't deserve to have their organs in order to make sure that he is out of prison.
Yes. Yeah, that's the last thing that he wants, is for his world to be reduced to a cell.
Right.
Now it's just Tobias and Hannibal. Tobias is a little disappointed that he didn't get to kill Franklin. And he pulls out, this is where the episode gets a little off the rails. I think it's...
I was like, what is happening?
I think Hannibal, like, it's interesting the way that Hannibal the show participates in camp sometimes. Because this very much feels campy to me. Like, this feels like an outrageous on purpose kind of thing, where Tobias pulls out this... I don't even know what you call it. It's a violin string with like something on the end so he can like twirl it through the air. And Hannibal's like, what in the fuck is this? What is going on? Like, what TV show did I just get into?
Honestly, like when I first watched this, I was like, does Hannibal even know how to fight? Like, because there had been no indication of that, right? We had seen him kill, we had seen him do a lot of things, but in those moments, like there was a very big power imbalance where like he was in control of the situation. Here, he's really not. And I'm like, I don't even know if my boo-boo knows how to fight. Like, what is going on here?
It's TV rules where everybody knows a little bit of karate, right? Like,
yeah, everybody knows kung fu.
Yeah, why does Sam Winchester know kung fu? Like, that doesn't make any sense. You have to ask the questions. Like, right? Why is Will carrying a gun into a shop? Like, that's another question that I keep meaning to ask.
That's another question. Why does Will have a gun? Period. Frankly,
there's
a really good question.
I meant to bring that up when they go see Dr. Gideon, and he's just standing in Chilton's office with a fucking huge ass revolver on his belt, and I'm just like, why, Will? Why? You're not even an FBI agent. Like, what are you doing? Why do you have a gun?
I also feel like those places would probably take your gun away,
yeah,
right? Like, because you wouldn't want an inmate to get one of those, right? Like,
wouldn't want an inmate to get a gun. Yeah. This fight is pretty brutal and a little bit over the top and ridiculous as they go back and forth.
It's perfect.
Tobias gets a stab in the leg in. They get several hits. Like, we see Hannibal kind of on the rocks a little bit. Like, he's kind of... He's down a little bit, but he's tricksy. So he tempts Tobias over to the ladder, and as he dodges a blow from Tobias's arm goes through the rungs of the ladder, and Hannibal is able to grab his arm and pull it, like snapping it. And Tobias is still like standing up and like trying to lunge at him with just one arm. But at this point, Hannibal knows what he's doing. He stabs him in the throat. Not stabs. He punches him in the throat, and Tobias just collapses. And he's gasping for breath as Hannibal puts on gloves, which I find really interesting, and smashes his head in with a stag statue that has been in his office since the first episode that you have never noticed, and it's been a lot for me.
I did notice it. I mentioned it. It was there. I knew, and I was like, oh my god, why is there a stag statue in there? But it's so funny because it just seems like so natural, right? Like, it's almost a reflex of his. Like, he grabs his little what is it? Like a little the silk that he has in his little pocket, and he's just like grabs the thing like this, and you can tell how practiced this is, and I'm just like, you are so scary, my dude. Yes. Like, this is so incredibly scary. And I just love also the stag statue here, because like, if you think about what just happened in the scene previously, like Will's imaginary stag basically saved his life earlier because he was outside the shop when Tobias started killing the cops. And here Hannibal uses like his stag statue to protect himself from Tobias. And I'm just like, ooh, symbolism.
Symbolism. It's so good. He also very carefully knocks over the table that the stag statue was on. And it's the practicing that you mentioned, like this practiced outlook. It's almost like he's setting all of this up to make sure it looks a certain way to absolve himself of any kind of suspicion, right? Like, that's the goal.
It's the performance, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's interesting that he's doing this just like almost by second nature. Like, it just doesn't. He's not doing it after the fact. Like, literally as he's picking up the statue, like he's thinking this stuff through to know exactly how it's going to look when the cops get there. And as he walks over, he hits a single note on his harpsichord, and as he does, like a song begins to play, and the song is a song that's in Silence of the Lambs. So that's, another little nod. So
I just love that, like, the notes that he plays on the harpsichord is in perfect pitch. Like, that instrument was fine.
It was okay.
Never needed to be restringed, right? Like, that was clearly the spider in the apartment. Like, there wasn't a spider.
I just wanted you over. Just wanted you to come over.
Yes, exactly. There was never a raccoon in my chimney. I just wanted you to come over.
We skip ahead in time a little bit, and the police have arrived, and they're investigating the scene. Jack walks through the door as Hannibal looks up, and obviously, like, there's a little bit of tension, and I'm glad the show doesn't stretch this out or anything. Like, we don't go into slow-mo mode or anything, but just very briefly afterwards, like, it cuts to Hannibal, and we see him, like, he has a tension, he's worried, and then Will walks through the door, and the relief that floods his face, like this moment where he realizes, oh my God, I'm so happy that he survived. Like, I'm so happy. It's so emotional. It's like, and I feel like this is almost Hannibal experiencing these moments, these emotions for the first time. Like, he's not had this before, and I don't think that he knew he even had this in him until this moment.
Yeah, that's very true. I think that, like, because he says, for the first time in a long time, I'm considering friendship, right, with Bedelia, and so, like, it feels like the relationships that he's had with other people before have just kind of been, like, very transactional, whereas this is something more that he doesn't quite understand. And, like, he's seeing when Will comes in, it's like, oh my God, finally someone who's clever enough to get past my walls and who's worthy of my friendship. And I kind of wish that we had put that in the intro song.
Only could do so much. Only could fit so much into a 1 minute rap.
Especially when I didn't know anything that was going to happen.
Yes,
right?
yeah.
But we need to update that eventually. We need to update that.
I need to work on that. We need to do season 2 from the perspective of Will, I think, is the way I want to do that. I think that'd be super fun.
Yeah.
Will, they question Hannibal on what happened, and he says that he was there with Franklin, who obviously knew Tobias, but possibly knew more than he was saying about Tobias, and Tobias came to kill him. And Hannibal's just like, because Jack has questioned this whole thing of, like, my FBI agent showed up at this dude's house, and then this dude immediately ran here to you. Like, what is going on? So Hannibal is constructing this thing and kind of saying, like, I don't know what was going on. Like, I was just here for Tobias or for Franklin when Tobias showed up and, like, killed him and then tried to kill me. Like, I don't know. I'm not a part of this, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he very much wants to be excluded from this conversation, from this narrative. I love that, right?
Yes, absolutely. He's just hiding, right? He's putting on the performance. This is the human suit all over again. And Jack, of course, says, like, this doesn't feel simple to me. Like, he's experienced enough as a cop to know, like, something weird is happening here.
Yeah, and he's right. I think that's the part that's, like, so ironic, is that he is absolutely right, but he has so much other crap, like, crowding his mind that he's like, oh well, whatever. Let's just close the case.
Will sits on the desk next to Hannibal. This is a very not quite intimate, but a very close moment between the two of them. And Will is apologetic as he says, like, I feel like I dragged you into my world. And Hannibal says, I got here on my own, but I appreciate the company. And it looks like he's almost about to cry as they have this moment of bonding, right? Like, this is definitely a moment where, like, transforms their friendship into something else. Like, you talk about that liquid to solid transformation from milk to cheese. And this is definitely the cheese. This is definitely the milk reaching towards immortality, right? Like, this is that moment with this relationship.
I mean, this is just, again, like, this is so romantic, right? Like, I just think, and this is me personally, but I just think that this is, like, the highest form of love. Like, when the relationship is based on, like, enjoying the presence and company of the other person. And that's what Hannibal is saying here. Like, I got here of my own free will, ha 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 ha, and I'm just happy to be here with you, right? Like, I'm just content in this moment right now.
Yes. It's so good.
I love that.
It's so good.
It's so good.
And very romantic. I think you're absolutely right.
So romantic. And the second thing here is that, like, earlier, like, these two men basically lived a really uncomfortable moment of trying to connect with somebody else, right? Like Will tried to connect to Alanna and she rejected him and she walked away. And Tobias tried to connect to Hannibal and Hannibal rejected Tobias and Tobias walked away. Whereas here, like the puzzle pieces are really fitting so much better because it's like Hannibal trying to connect to Will by telling him that he appreciates his company. And it's Will accepting the show of affection by smiling and staying right where he is. And again, so romantic. Like this is a rom-com trope.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. This is, and I love the idea too of comparing and contrasting like their earlier relationships with Alanna and Tobias, because in a bubble, like in a like if anybody looked at this from the outside, like Will and Lana are a match for one another, and Tobias and Hannibal are a match for one another based on their interests and their hobbies and things. But they were like neither one of those worked out, and now this like odd couple situation between Hannibal and Will, right? Like it's a very odd couple kind of trope. And I love it so much because I don't think either one of them really understand what's happening at this moment. And for Hannibal to be a little off his game, so to speak, to be a little out of control or not to have the control that he usually does, even over his own body. Like here he's disheveled, which in a way that we've really never seen him be in front of anybody. And it's just kind of fascinating, like this whole relationship. And this episode ends with a scene with Hannibal and Bedelia as he tells her that he's going to see patients again. He's taken a couple of days off from seeing patients. And he talks about, someone will sit in the chair that Franklin died in and things like that, which is not actually true at all. And he asks her, he says he understands why Bedelia wanted to retire after she was attacked and asks her, will you ever feel comfortable returning to psychiatric work? And she just looks at him. And man, the tension in this scene is just so crazy. Like we just don't know what is happening, what these two characters have been through together. Yeah. And she says, this is psychiatric work. She's almost like pushing it back in his face. And Hannibal says like, oh, I feel responsible for Franklin's death. And Bedelia says like, no, you shouldn't. Every person has an intrinsic responsibility for their own life, and we can't take that away from them. Like, everything that Franklin did to get himself there, like, is on Franklin. Like, you can't take that responsibility away from him. And you have a note in here that feels like terrible advice, and I absolutely agree. This does not sound like something you should tell a serial killer.
No, yes, there you go. Like this is terrible advice to be giving to a serial killer because like it really shifts the blame from the perpetrator to the victim. And I again, knowing a little bit more about Bedelia now, like I understand that this advice makes sense for her to be giving to Hannibal in this moment on the surface, but the dramatic irony here is really killing me. Yeah. I'm just like, girl, no.
Please don't.
No.
And he asked her if she took responsibility for her attack, and she says she did, but not for the attacker's death. And then she looks at him in a very weighted way and says, nor should you. And that's where the episode ends. And so now we even have more information that she was attacked, and apparently that attacker died somehow, but we don't know how. And will we find out?
Well, one would assume that she killed him. Right? Like that's my assumption.
We'll find out about all of the things that happened in this episode. And that's it. And man, what a wild episode of television. Again, just the idea that we spend a whole lot of time like seeing and tracking this like killer. It's in a very monster of the week fashion. But most of this episode is actually about Will and Hannibal's relationship and that changing, that reach towards immortality, that substance change, that state change from friendship to something else, from liquid to solid. As you've mentioned several times, is extremely good.
It's so good. I can't believe I haven't watched this show before.
I'm surprised too, to be honest with you. Like when I texted you or when I DM'd you that day, which seems like it was like yesterday at this point, but
I know, right?
And I was like, "Have you seen Hannibal? Like, Gillian Anderson's in it; she's great." And you're like, "No, it's on my list to watch one day." And I was like, "Okay, I think you will get the brainworms on this pretty bad." So.
And it's so hard because like we're recording about once a week, which is really great, but we're only like releasing episodes every 2 weeks. So at this point we have this huge backlog of episodes, which is great, but it's also like oh my God, what's going to happen for season 2? Are we going to have to wait? Like, and I'm just, oh my God. Anyway.
The answer is no. We're absolutely not going to wait. Like I don't care if we finish all 3 seasons and it's like we are booked until the end of 2025 and it's January. Like I don't care. I love the pace we're going at because I feel like you are enjoying this and that comes through on the podcast quite a bit. So I want to make sure we keep up that energy. We can go back and talk about like feedback episodes or whatever, but honestly, like the pace that we're rolling at is so much fun. So, do you have any last thoughts before we go to our review section?
No more thoughts.
No more thoughts.
Do you have any last thoughts
no,
before we move on to the review?
Just that you always say that you have no more thoughts at this. Every time I ask you that, you're like, nope, no thoughts, only vibes.
No thoughts.
Okay.
Well, because that's how it feels, right? Like I think we also spend so much time talking about the episode, right? That we do manage to get like a lot of it out, and so when we get to the end, I'm like exhausted. I'm like, no more thoughts. No more thoughts. No mas.
Now what do I do? Now what do I got to go through?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's get into our reviews. Mary, you go first.
All right, so I'm going to give this episode 4 stars. It was a bold follow-up to our fruity sorbet. This sharp, salty, and a little nutty fromage hits just the right unconventional notes for the beginning of the end of this unforgettable meal.
And I will also give this 4 stars and say it's decisively creamy fromage course with notes of bitterness and fruitiness to accompany the delicious texture.
Oh, yum.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to Rude Eats. We so much appreciate all of the feedback we've been getting from you guys. We've noted a couple of times that we're very much ahead on this podcast. We're recording this literally 2 months before it's going to come out. So as of right now, people have been so nice and kind to listen and to give us a shot and things like that. And I just want to say thank you. It means a lot to us.
Yeah, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for telling your friends. Thank you for, finding us also. Like it's been like there's been so many really fun encounters of people being like, oh my God, I didn't know you guys were doing this. This is so cool. And it's just, I don't know. I love it. It's great. Thank you for the love.
Mary, where can you be found on the internet?
You can find me, unfortunately, on Twitter at MaryTurner_. You can also...
Unfortunately,
I mean, let's be real. Unfortunately, still on Twitter at MaryTurner_. You can also find my other podcasts, Carrying Wayward about Supernatural and The Gentleman Pirates Library on Our Flag Means Death. And you can find those anywhere you listen to your podcasts.
You can find me on Twitter at JG Greer. You can find my podcast about Merlin, Supernatural, X-Files, Cowboy Bebop, all at creepy but necessary.cool. Please go check any and all of those out if you will. And thank you for listening again.
We also have a special Patreon only podcast.
Oh yeah,
lately
I do.
Right?
Yeah, my sword is hungry. My sword is hungry still. Yeah, we go dramatic on our names at the Monster of the Week outfit.
It's great.
We will never have a normal podcast name again. That's what I've decided. I don't care. We started Game of Thrones for our patrons, so if that's something that you're into, go check it out. There's a link to Creepy but Necessary to Cool to our Patreon that you can go join up. Also, since this is coming out so late, I can talk about this later today. I'm recording a live commentary on the movie Twilight with my buddy Chris that we're going to release for patrons, so that you can, if you for some reason want to listen to Twilight and have me and Chris talk over it, you can do that. So that's going to be super fun. I've never seen Twilight, so I'm very excited and nervous. I bought a 6-pack to get me through this, so that's If you want to know what the vibes are going to be Chris and Jeremy get drunk on a podcast together. So
I'm so excited. I've never seen Twilight either, so it'll be fun for my first experience with Twilight to be your commentary.
Yeah, me and Chris talking about Bella or whatever. And Chris has seen Twilight like 1,000 times. Like I think it's a comfort movie for him and his fiance, because he's constantly sending me like Twilight memes and things like that, and talking about Edward and all this other stuff. So I cannot wait to experience this. It's gonna be super fun.
Yeah. I was like a Twilight hater when it came out. Like,
me too. I was very much a Twilight hater.
Such an anti. Yeah. Oh my god.
I thought it was like one of the dumbest things ever, like with the sparkling, and I didn't know anything about it. Like, and I still don't really know. I tried to read the book, and I bounced off the book real hard. I was like, no, this is not for me. But I grew up reading Interview with the Vampire, which is like the goth kid vampire stuff. Like those were too easy vampires for me. I didn't care about those easy vampires. They weren't goth enough.
It's the skin of a killer, Bella. I'm sorry. I just know these lines.
Yeah, I know. Like I know random like lines and memes because Chris sends them to me so much. That's how I know all this stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you for listening. Go to rooteats.cool to find everything.
Yes.
And bon appetit.
Bon appetit, everybody. Another 2 hours.
Another 2 hours on 45 minutes.
Unbelievable.
When I mentioned to Mike earlier about Alanna and Will, it reminded me that he had texted me on Thursday because we were talking about like doctor stuff. He was like trying to interpret like test results and things, but he just texted me, question for you, ... And I just assumed he was going to text again, and he didn't. Like he just left in like a question for you. So I was like, as we were talking, I was like, oh, what was your question? Like you didn't never text me. He goes, I forget what it was. So I was like, oh, okay. Well, I said, and I was like, I'm podcasting. I'm podcasting about Hannibal right now, and your name came up. So I just wanted to, just reminded me to come back and check with you. And he says, and I don't know what this means, so I'm hoping that you can tell me. Tell the virgin possum who can't drive that I said hello. And I want you to know how much I had to not laugh when that came up, because we were literally talking about like serious like Hannibal stuff, and I was like, I can't laugh at whatever the virgin possum is, but I'm here for it.
It's because I don't even remember how this started, but one day he just sent me that gif from Clueless where he's like, "You're a virgin who can't drive." And so from there, it kind of became a joke that like I'm a virgin who can't drive.
That's very funny. Very funny. Just like Dean Winchester.
And yes, exactly. Just like in the same way, actually, in the same way. And the possum thing is just because I love possums, and I just think that their little faces when they're screaming just are very reminiscent of mine when I'm trying to do something that overwhelms me. So I identify with possums a lot. They're just as feral as I am, which I love. Good for them.
Is this the time where I just start trying to talk to all of your voice-activated machines in your house?
Oh, it was just because my headphones were not turned on. Hello.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm extremely good. I'm extremely full. We found we went to a grocery store yesterday that we don't normally go to, so we were like spying on everything to see what they had, any cool stuff, and they had these frozen croissants made by a local bakery. So we made them this morning. I say we ought to made them this morning, and I can do one croissant, but I got greedy and decided to eat 2 croissants, and now I am dead. I am Logi.
Oh yes! Oh my god, that's so good. You know how I know that I am extremely French? Because like I'm like, oh yeah, 2 croissants. That's like breakfast,
that's
right?
Breakfast.
Like, that's
yeah,
fine.
No problem whatsoever.
No biggie.
Yeah, I walked in there to get some water, and I told Autumn, I was like, I don't think I have to eat for the rest of the day. I think this is going to be who I am now. This is just who. This is how I exist.
The butter.
Yes.
It's all the butter.
It's a lot.
I love it.
Yes. And we smoked a prime rib yesterday. Which is
oh my god,
a huge piece of meat, and it was super fun and good.
Okay, I'm not recording. All right,
and delicious.
How long does that take? To smoke a full piece of meat like that?
I'll send you a picture.
Oh yes, please. Oh no,
I'm always like prime. I get a little weird about sending people pictures of meat nowadays because I feel like I don't know if that makes sense, but like. because some like like posting like a giant picture of bloody meat is like, well, maybe people don't want to see that.
Sure, yeah.
Oh, god damn it! I hate this HEIC bullshit. I don't know if that'll come across on Discord for you.
Oh, hold on, let me see. I was able to download it. Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
all right.
We smoke it at like 250 for about, I think we did like 3.5, 4 hours. And that gets it to like an internal temp of about like 110, 120. And then we put it in the oven at like 450 to kind of crisp up the outsides. So it gets all kind of nice and crispy on the outside and like really, really tender on the inside. It's so good. It looks like
whole mouth is just filled with saliva right now. Oh my God.
I'll have to find, I didn't take pictures of the rest of it. This is a meal we make, every once in a while. Usually we do it with special guests, but we were just kind of in the mood to party. So, but she does like popovers. I don't know if you're familiar with what popovers are. If you ever,
aren't they like? I think
giant. They look like giant like muffins, basically, like that are huge.
Ah, okay.
But they are really good. I'll see if I can find a picture of
them.
I
was like, do I get a picture of those? Because like I'm interested. I thought that they were kind of like those. What are they called? Like the Yorkshire puddings or whatnot.
Yes,
that, like
yes, very much so.
They're kind of like that. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Where like you heat up the muffin tin in the oven with the oil, and then you pour the batter in, and then it just like puffs up, and it looks delicious.
You are absolutely nailing this. This is exactly what you're
see, there you go. I know the British version of it because Bake Off.
Bake Off. I think that's where we kind of came up with this. It was the Bake Off. So
yeah.
Do I have pictures of? I mean, surely I do. I have a picture of like the final plate. And that has a popover on it. She also does fondant potatoes, which are really, really good.
Yum. Those, I'm sure those taste like the potatoes from heaven that my son really loved this summer.
So this was our first batch, but I don't know that they came out exactly the way she wanted to. There should be like bigger than this. Paste enter. But it gives you the idea because I think we did something with the oil or something that didn't quite come out the way she wanted it to.
Oh, that looks very yummy though.
Yeah.
Is it? Good. So what's the texture like of those things? Because I've always wanted to try them.
They're really good. They're so like they're a little like thicker and breadier than a croissant, but like the top parts are really airy and delicious. So they're very good for because she made a gravy. And of course with prime rib we got to have horseradish on the side, so like I was making little Yorkshire pudding prime rib gravy horseradish sandwiches with these things. It was so good.
Listen, I just had a plate full of pancakes, and how am I hungry for this now? Like,
are you still hungry? Yeah, and we have, of course, I mean, we just two people, and her dad doesn't eat prime rib because it's rare, and he doesn't like rare meat because he's a heathen. So we have this for dinner tonight too, and I'm pretty excited about it.
Oh, yes. I love leftover meat like that. I find it so delicious. Plus, like after, like, I don't know about you guys, but like I love making those sandwiches after, like with the leftover meat. Like,
that will probably be, it kind of depends. I'll probably do like a sandwich for lunch today and do like a full like dinner thing for dinner tonight. But yes, we do love the sandwiches. And then whatever's left over, like we'll vacuum seal and freeze, and just like, okay, we want some prime rib sandwiches. Let's make some prime rib sandwiches real quick, so and not have to spend an enormous amount of money on a giant piece of meat. So
I need to get myself a vacuum sealer. Is what I realized.
It's good. It's life changing for us because we make a lot of big meals, and again, just two people. Like it's pretty difficult to cook for just two people. So. Having those easy meals on hand is super, super good.
Yeah. I just made a big batch of like tomato soup and tomato sauce. Yeah. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Get you some cheese sandwiches. Get a good bowl of tomato soup.
Yep. With my homemade bread, homemade tomato soup. Yes.
Yeah.
And maybe eventually homemade cheese.
maybe some homemade cheese. Did you ever hook up with your flour guy?
I did.
You did.
Yes. And I wanted to take pictures, but because it's an actual real like mill, they're like, yes, you're not allowed to use electronics in here because, fire safety.
Oh yeah, I guess because of all of the like the particles in the air, right? Like it's kind of like
exactly.
Okay.
Right. So like they have like their own stuff. You can still pay with like Interac and whatnot, but like they're like, in order to reduce the risk, we really ask that you don't take pictures.
Man,
so,
I think it's in season 1. There's a silo episode of Hannibal, and it's intense. It's an intense moment. So.
What's that one going to be called? Like,
can't remember if it's in season 1 or not. So I'm curious. I get them all confused because. Yeah.
I just want to say that, like, for now, it's a good thing because, like, I know French and, like, I can, make some educated comments about, like, French language and whatnot. But, like, when we get to the Japanese stuff, like, what are we going to do?
We're going to have to do a lot of research. Like, we're both going to have to, like, team up on it. I'm going to get Autumn to help. This is season 2.
I got no clue.
Season 2, episode 2.
Season 2, episode 2. Okay.
Sakazuke. So we'll have to, like, I'm going to have to, like, Google that and, like, get how to pronounce it correctly and do that whole thing. So. Okay,
so for some reason, 10-year-old who will be 11 by the time this comes out
nice.
has decided that he absolutely needed a Duolingo account in order to learn Japanese.
Okay, excellent.
So I was like, well, maybe that could be one of our resources.
Yeah, good. We'll get 10-year-old to say it on the podcast for us. You might as well, like, what is a child doing if you're not using it for content, right? Like that's you should be using it for your social media experiences.
Yes, exactly. Use them, exploit them for your social media content. That is exactly what children are for.
That's the only thing I can see that they're for.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Well, some people make a lot of money off of their kids on social media.
It's pretty gross.
Yes.
I don't like it. I don't think that it's good. I can't remember if this was a real thing or something I saw on a TV show, but there was. Maybe it was probably a TV show, but like there was a girl who was like in her mid-teens, and her mom was like a mommy blogger type, and the girl would always walk around in a shirt that says "I do not consent to be filmed at this time," and the mom was just driving the mom crazy because she'd just walk by in the background. She's like, "I do not consent to be filmed." It's just very funny.
Yeah,
it's pretty gross. I don't like people that exploit children for really anything.
For anything, yeah.
We're watching that chimp documentary on Max right now. And
the what documentary?
The chimp documentary. It's called Chimp Crazy.
Okay.
And it's about this woman who, or it's about people basically, but one woman specifically who is like treats these like baby chimps like they're children. Like it's insane. But it's very much the similar kind of thing of like we're going to dress them up and put them on Instagram and things like that. It's just very exploitative, and I do not like it.
Yeah, it's a weird time because like when 11-year-old was born was like the height of those like mommy blogs. And so it was kind of weird to see it like go from like a community of parents like sharing stuff together to like, oh shit, I can make money off of like their pictures. And that's really when it turned me off entirely because like I was like, that's not great.
Yeah.
That's not the goal.
Yeah. I don't know. I find it weird when people like dress up. I know it sounds weird because I think people are very excited, but like school photos happen a lot, like on my Facebook. And that's just first day of school or whatever. And I'm like, okay, like if you say so. I don't know. I find the whole thing very weird. Yeah. Oh wow! I was Googling. I was looking at the notes, and you had that tweet at the bottom, and it said he looked like he was trying to be that one, the Tasha Kinski snake photo shoot. So I was like,
"Oh, you Googled that?"
So I Googled that, and I'm like looking at the image now, and I'm like, "Oh, okay." Damn, Tasha! I don't even know who you are, but you were brave for having that snake all up in your business. So.
I mean, I feel like for some reason it also works with like the painting that you pointed out.
Yes.
And when you like when I read that note, I was just like, oh, he's lounging about in a horse manner.
Yes. Ever since starting the X-Files podcast, we have been sent that tweet probably 300 to 400 times. Like it's
yes,
we get
yes.
that one a lot. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's just because like you see this man today, and it doesn't seem like this is like the young man that he was.
I know.
So it's surprising to find out that, like, you know, he was a TA, he had a master's degree and everything. Like, it's, I don't know.
And then he narrated a softcore porn show for Showtime for a season or two.
I mean, listen, English lit, softcore porn, like, you know.
It's basically the same thing
just
at that
saying.
point. Yeah. It's just a fun time being David Duchovny, it sounds like. Oh, yeah. You want me to take a picture with my completely nude with my junk in a teacup? Yeah, sure. I don't mind. We're just hanging out.
Listen, him and Gillian Anderson did some really unhinged photo shoots in the 90s, as you know.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
It wasn't just him. It was her, too.
And now she's got that book about sexual fantasies out.
I know.
And apparently one of her sexual fantasies in there is like an anonymous thing. And she's not telling people who it is, obviously, which one it is, obviously. But it's I think it's just a way to get people to read the book, like to buy the book and read it. Of course. But it's interesting the things that she's talking about.
It worked on me.
Oh, really? Have you read it yet?
No, I haven't read it, but I am going to order it. I was going to order it like last weekend, but then I was like, okay, let's just wait because it's early September for us. So all of the school expenses have come through, and I was just like, Gillian Anderson's sexual fantasy will just have to wait.
It'll just have to wait for a little while.
Yeah, exactly. But I will get back to it.
You know, she's talking about like destigmatizing the idea of sex and sexual fantasies and things for women. Yeah. And I'm just really curious if they go into like the fanfic side at all, right? Because it seems like there's that whole like if you just go to AO3, you're like, oh, this is where all of the women go to get all of this stuff. Like this is the thing. And I'd be really curious if they delved into that at all. Like they obviously don't have to or anything. It's just kind of an interesting perspective if you're going to talk about that in a general way.
I mean, when you think about it, her book is kind of organized by tags, right? Like, 'cause it's organized by theme. So I can't remember exactly what they are, but like it's like some of those are literal tags on AO3.
Oh, that's so funny.
Or like there's like an equivalent for it, right? So like it's it's AO3.
It's AO3, yeah.
It's AO3.
I think my favorite AO3 tag, just as a concept, and you and I may have talked about this before on a podcast, but the dead dove tag.
Yes,
because I love it because it's like changed because of like the original joke from Arrested Development is like, you know, there's a bag in the refrigerator called with the words dead dove written on it. The guy opens it and he looks at it and he goes, well, I don't know what I expected.
Like, because it's an actual dead dove
it's an actual dead
bag,
dove.
Right? Yeah, there you go.
And then like,
oh, Job.
So dead dove starts to become a thing of like, no, this is like, read the tags. Like this is going to be serious. This is a lot. And then it like changes so that people are like using it ironically almost, and the definition changes. And people are like, you shouldn't tag your stuff dead dove if it has this or this or this or this. And like, there's like that, like a mini fandom argument about it. And it's just so fascinating to me. Like AO3 as a concept is just amazing and fascinating to me, 100%. So
yeah. I mean, I find it weird that like people, because like I think the thing is like a lot of people heard dead dove without really knowing where it was from, and so like they sort of assumed that it meant certain things, that it meant like dark fic or whatever. But like dead dove has always meant like read the tags. You will get exactly what the tags say.
I am not
Don't read this and complain, right? Like, there you go, kind of thing. Because that was kind of becoming an issue where people were tagging their fics, and then people were like, "Oh, I can't believe you put this in," and they're like, "It's tagged." Like, what did you expect?
I literally told you this ahead of time.
Yeah, there you go.
It's very, very funny to me.
It's so weird to me. And interestingly, so I'm actually really interested to get into this because I know that the Hannibal fandom has some really interesting and intricate like inter-fandom arguments. And I don't quite know what they are, but I know that they have to do with dead dove. And I am so excited to get into those eventually because I'm sure it'll come to our attention.
I will have to do some research as we get to the end of the. Or I guess I can just do it now. I know the ending, so like it's not a big deal. I will have to do some research on that. I don't know anything about the Hannibal fandom really. it's fandom spaces are so interesting and so weird. I just never really participated in a lot of them, like before getting into podcasting, and really podcasting about Supernatural specifically. So like now I'm looking at like the Reddit of Hannibal, but like when I was just watching Hannibal, I was just watching Hannibal. Like I didn't go online to like talk about Hannibal or anything. So it's wild that like you go into these communities and there's like long-standing arguments and about fanfic or whatever. It's so hilarious.
Exactly. I love that. It's and that's kind of the thing sometimes I find in fandom that I've experienced anyway personally. It's that like fandom arguments kind of get lost in some of the details. Like I find that sometimes we forget the forest for the trees. And that's why I now like to kind of keep at just a little bit of distance with fandom discourse, because like it's really interesting to participate and to witness and to see. But also, like, I kind of refuse to get sucked into the drama of it, because that's what ends up happening. And by drama, sometimes I mean like people getting really nasty and doxing other people, and like it becomes like real issues, right, over fictional characters, and I'm not into that. That's not cool.
It's, you know, I think you and I are on kind of on the same page. Where like it's okay to like a bad guy, and the idea that like I enjoy a fic that has XYZ tag on it. So therefore I am a bad person is just fucking wild to me. Like that is, or if I enjoy this character or a particular ship, or, you know, even if it's like a problematic ship in real life, like if it's not something that you would ever want to do in real life or never want to see in real life, fiction, that's what fiction is for. It's for exploring that and figuring stuff out, and for like, you know, dealing with that almost. And the idea that like, I don't know, like I feel like the internet's gotten like weirdly, I guess, chastity driven almost. I don't know if that's the word I'm really looking for, but like Puritan is the word that I'm looking for. Thank you. And it's just so strange. Like I don't know. Like, you should be able to do anything you want to. You're not hurting anybody. Like, you're tagging it correctly, so who cares?
Exactly. I think that's like my whole point. Like, literally, no real person is getting exploited in these situations, and it's like that's exactly what you want.
Yeah,
right?
that's the way this should work. Like, if you look at actual pornography, like those poor women are being exploited all of the time. Like, if you know, if you participate in that system, like even in you know, if you look at OnlyFans or whatever, like even in those systems, like you can be exploited. This is just fiction. These are just letters on a page. It doesn't matter.
I know. I get it. I totally get it. And I think that this is kind of like at the heart of some of the Hannibal fandom's issues. So I'm excited for you to kind of like look into, because I'm afraid of Googling anything that has to do with Hannibal.
You absolutely can't. Yeah, it's like you will be immediately spoiled on everything. And the ending is so good, and like the ending of season 2 is so good that like I'm trying desperately to like keep an egg around you so you don't hear anything.
It's, you know, I've been really careful. I did Google a thing the other day because I was looking, it was about the painting. So I Googled the painting and it brought me to a page, and I started like looking at the painting, and then but I thought it was about the episode that we were covering today, but it was about a future episode. And I'm like, no. So I read like a couple lines of dialogue of therapy between Hannibal and Will, or conversation, I should say, because is he patient? Is he not a patient? That's problematic.
Extremely problematic, yes.
Not the fact that Hannibal is a cannibal, but whatever. So yeah, there was no context, and so I didn't get it. So.
Yeah. And a lot of that conversation is so cerebral. Like, it's not like, I think you could probably read like a whole scene between Will and Hannibal and not get spoiled on like the stuff that I would be worried that you get spoiled on, right? Like, just
tell
because
me,
just tell me, Will. I made a really terrible joke. I wanted to, since we were talking about Lita and the Swan, I'll do this in the outtakes because I don't really want to bring it up on the podcast. Somebody, so I brought up the swan fucking thing on Blue Sky.
Okay.
And yes, this is such a good. So basically said like, sometimes researching your Hannibal for your stuff for your Hannibal podcast is like listening to opera, and sometimes it leads you directly to swan fucking.
Yes.
And somebody was like, are they at least graceful? This dude, Tom. And I was like, there are beautiful pictures and sculptures of swan fucking dating back to the Roman Empire, my dude. And he responded, they understood Lita-ship back then, which is one of the best puns that I've ever seen in my life because it works on like 3 different levels, and I just love it. Lita-ship. They understood Lita-ship back then. Oh, that's so good. Thank you, Tom Haley, if you're listening to this podcast.
Yes, thank you very much, Tom, for this Sunday morning laugh. It's great. I love it.
You want to get into it?
I'm ready to get into it.
All right, time to start our 3-hour conversation about Hannibal.